Welcome to Ouch. Was that a ghost? This podcast may contain graphic material, which some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Help me.
Now that we covered that, here's your host, Liz.
Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm covering the case of Katherine Knight. She's also known as the Australian Ed Gein. Katherine Mary Knight was born on October 24th, 1955, in Tenterfield, New South Wales in Australia. Katherine had a very unconventional childhood, a really rough upbringing. Katherine's mother, Barbara Rogan, was married to John Rogan. They lived in a small town of Aberdeen in New South Wales. They had 4 children together, and at some point, Barbara, who's Katherine's mother, started an affair with her husband's co-worker and friend, Ken Knight. I know there's a lot of people in this. I'll try to keep it as concise as possible with the characters. Them living in a small town, rumors about the affair spread quickly, and it ruined their reputations. Ken and Barbara couldn't deal with all the whispering and the talk of their affair, so they ended up moving to Moree. I think it's Moree, maybe more. And Barbara actually left her 4 sons behind. 2 stayed with their father, Jack, and 2 went with an aunt. So now Barbara and Ken, the ones that were having the affair, they left town, and they went on to have 4 children together, including a set of twin girls in 1955, one of who was Katherine Knight. When Barbara's first husband died, the 2 sons that were living with him came to stay with her, with the new family she'd started. This was not necessarily a happy family. Ken was said to be a violent alcoholic who would sexually assault Barbara. Some accounts say up to 10 times a day, and some say in front of the children. Barbara would tell the daughters about the attacks and share way more than she should have about the sexual acts. And she made her disdain for men very clear to her daughters, this being during their formative years. Now, Katherine herself would later claim that she was sexually assaulted up until she was 11 by family members. She never specifically said her father, but some have implied this, and some do dispute it, so I don't know. Katherine wasn't close with many people growing up, except with her twin and her uncle Oscar Knight. And when Katherine was about 14 years old, Oscar took his own life. After this happened, the family moved back to Aberdeen. There, Katherine went to high school. At high school, she was said to be an outcast, a loner. She was also known to be the bully that would pick on smaller kids. And I guess some accounts say that she picked on teachers as well. Well, with at least one teacher who was injured by Katherine, I guess in some sort of self-defense. Katherine left school at 15 years old, unable to read or write. She went to work at a clothing factory. And then she went on to pursue her dream job the next year at a slaughterhouse. And she excelled there. She was cutting organs out of animals, and she even got her own set of butcher knives. I guess that she would challenge some of the men at the factory or at the slaughterhouse to fight her with the knives, but I don't think that any took her up on the offer. Katherine was so proud of these butcher knives, I guess she hung them over her bed just in case. Katherine was known as someone around town who you didn't want to piss off. Even though she had this feared persona, Katherine, I guess, had no problem getting men. She married her first husband in 1974. He was a co-worker named David Stanford Kellett. He was said to be a heavy drinker like her father. And he also liked to fight. He would go out, drink, and then he would start fistfights. And Katherine would just hop in and help her man. So he put a ring on it. And on their wedding day, they arrived on a motorcycle, Katherine driving, because David was sloshed on the back of the motorcycle. They had their ceremony, and then Katherine's mother offered her new son-in-law some advice. She said not to upset Katherine, as she can sometimes be unpredictable. which David would soon learn was very true. On the first night, the newlyweds consummated the marriage 3 times, and then David fell asleep. Which, the guy had been drinking all day, so, Katherine was fuming because she had heard of others having more sex on their wedding night, so she decided she was going to do something about it. So then she just decided to strangle her new husband. He did manage to get her off of him. What a start to a marriage. It was just a hot mess. They would fight. David would have affairs. One night, David made it into the finals of a dart competition, so he arrived home a little bit late. And when he arrived home, he found that all of his shoes and clothing had been burnt up. And then Katherine hit him over the head with a pan, fracturing his skull. He managed to make it to a neighbor's house. Police were called out, but Katherine somehow talked David into dropping the charges. This was just a bumpy marriage, and it lasted for 10 years. The two went on to have a child together in 1976, Melissa Ann. And then David ended up leaving Katherine for another woman, which, great, get away from the abuse, but he left this helpless little baby with her. The day after he left, Katherine was seen down the main street of town just pushing this baby carriage that she was just tossing around with the baby inside of it. Thankfully, authorities were called. She was admitted to a local hospital. There she was diagnosed with postnatal depression. She spent several weeks there, and she was said to have been better and left the hospital. So then she had her baby back. And not long after, she took her 2-month-old daughter and placed her on train tracks. She stole an axe and proceeded to go into town, threatening to kill numerous people. Thankfully, the baby was found by a homeless man that was luckily in that area, and he grabbed her off the track, the baby, minutes before a train passed. Again, authorities were called. Katherine was arrested, and she was sent to the same hospital where she just signed herself out the next day. Days later, Katherine was at a gas station with one of her knives, and she cut a woman's face after she demanded that that woman drive Katherine to the town where her husband was. Police were called, and by the time they arrived, Katherine had taken a little boy hostage with that knife she had, and she said she'd use the knife on him too. And the police came in to disarm her, I guess with brooms. I'm assuming they used the stick handle just because it's longer. It would be kind of funny if they had the brush part fighting her with that, but I'm assuming it was the stick part that they were using just to get more distance. She was then sent to a different hospital, the Morissette Psychiatric Hospital. There, she told the staff that she wanted to kill the mechanic at the gas station because he's the one that fixed her husband's car. And that allowed him to leave. I don't understand her messed up logic, but I guess to her it made sense. And after that, she was going to go kill her husband and his mother. When David, her husband, learned about all this, he left his girlfriend and moved back to Aberdeen with his mother for Katherine. So now these two people that Katherine wanted to kill came back to take care of her. Katherine was released into their care, and they moved into another city, Ipswich. She got a job at another meat facility, Dinmore Meatworks. And in 1980, the couple had another daughter named Natasha. In 1985, Katherine ended up leaving David, and she went back to her parents' house in Aberdeen while she looked for a house to rent. She ended up finding one, and she moved into this rented house. She went back to work. And then I guess she hurt her back and went out on disability. And she moved into this housing assistance residency in Aberdeen. In 1986, Katherine met David Saunders, a minor, like the job minor, not like a minor like underage. They met, and within months, he moved in with her and her 2 daughters. This relationship, yet again, was super toxic. Katherine would regularly accuse him of cheating, and she couldn't deal with the fact that David kept his apartment, which I kind of understand because she would regularly accuse him of cheating and would throw him out of her apartment and then go and ask for him back. It was like back and forth. But this unhinged Katherine, this is like an animal cruelty trigger, so skip ahead a minute if you don't want to hear it. One day, she took David's 8-week-old puppy and slit its throat in front of him as a warning that this would happen to him if he ever cheated on her. Which I don't get how these guys stay with her after seeing this type of behavior. And I guess she hit him over the head with a frying pan as well. So they went on to have a daughter together. In 1988, Sarah was born. David, stepping up to be a dad, got a house for them to live in, and Katherine decorated it with skulls and horns and machetes all over the walls, ceilings, animal traps, pitchforks, a place to raise babies. They continued fighting, including a day when Katherine stabbed him in the stomach with scissors. He left, and when he came back to see his kid, all of his stuff was cut up, and Katherine had this protection order in place. She told the police that she was scared of David. Then in 1991, Katherine was in a relationship with John Killington. He was an old co-worker from the slaughterhouse, and she went on to have another child, a son, Eric, and they were together for another 3 years, and then she left him for another man that she had been having an affair with, another John Price. So John Charles Thomas Price was a divorced father of 3. He had the older 2 children living with him, and his younger child, the 2-year-old, lived with his ex-wife. They broke up, but they seemed to still have a good relationship. John was said to have been liked by all. He had a great job. And in 1995, Katherine moved in with John. John, who's, like I said, had his 2 older children living with him. And they seemed to like Katherine. Everything seemed okay. But as time passed, Katherine wanted to get married. They'd been dating for 3 years, and John was like, I don't want to get married. And Katherine's not the person that seems to be okay with not getting what she wants. So after some big blowout they had over this, him not wanting to get married and her wanting to get married, Katherine made a videotape. She taped and narrated some items that John had taken from his job, a job that he had worked at for 17 years. And what he took was small things, like first aid kits that were being thrown away in the dumpster anyways, and he just brought them home. So she took that video and then she sent it off to his boss. This resulted in John being fired from his job of 17 years that paid him very well. He was understandably upset, and he ended up kicking Katherine out. She went back to her place, but after a few months, they started seeing each other again, and Katherine started staying there again. There was a bunch of physical altercations between John and Katherine. In 2000, when Katherine stabbed him in the chest, John had enough. He went to court and got a restraining order. He told his coworkers if he ever went missing, it was Katherine that killed him. Like, he was really nervous. And even after the restraining order, his friends were like, I wouldn't go back there. But John was really nervous about what Katherine would do to his children if he did not go home. So John got home, and he found that Katherine sent the kids to sleep over some friend's house for the night. And John ended up hanging out with his neighbors till around 11 p.m., which I guess was a pretty normal thing for him to do. Then he went home and went to sleep. Katherine arrived back there with some lingerie that she had bought that day. She showered, woke up John, they had sex, and then he went back to sleep. The next morning, when John Price didn't arrive at work, which was very out of character for him, he was never a no-show at work. This, and along with the statements he'd been saying to his coworkers. So his boss sent one of his employees by John Price's house. His coworker at the house, he found a neighbor who was also worried because John Price's car was still in the driveway, which again, very unlike him. They tried knocking on his bedroom window, thinking maybe he just overslept. But that thought quickly turned to panic once they found blood on the front door. They called the police. The police did a forced entry through the back door. Inside, they found the table set for a meal, a curtain hanging by the living room. And as they looked around, things got dark very quick. They looked inside the pot on the stove, and inside was a human head. They realized that the meat that was on the plate was not steak. After finding John Price's body propped up with his left arm on a soda bottle and his legs crossed, with no skin on his body and pieces of meat missing off of his body, they realized that the meat on the plate was not steak. They found Katherine in bed sleeping. They tried to wake her, but she had taken a large amount of pills. The night before, when Katherine had sex with him, she stashed a knife next to the bed. So when he fell asleep, she just started stabbing him. And John woke up and he tried to get away. And he made it to the front door, got the door open, and actually made it outside, only to be dragged back in before he bled out in the hallway. That's terrifying, having that little bit of hope like you made it just to be pulled back in. After John was deceased, Katherine went into town and used John Price's bank card and took $1,000 out of his ATM. I don't know why she took out the $1,000. Maybe it was for the pills that she took. The autopsy showed that she had stabbed him at least 37 times. I'm saying at least because that's what they could count. But there could have been stabs in the same area. His body was so badly mutilated. She stabbed him in the front, the back, so it could have been like multiple stabs, but it looks like just one. After Price had died, Katherine, this was hours after, Katherine, who had all that slaughterhouse experience, she literally skinned Price, keeping the skin intact. Do you know how long that must have taken? Then she hung the skin on the meat hook, the skin in one piece. This was what the police thought was a curtain when they walked into the house. After skinning him, Katherine decapitated John and put his head in a pot with cut up vegetables, and she cut pieces of, I don't even know how to say it, like meat off of John and cut it into chunks like beef. And she cooked it all up like a stew. Like this was a person she cooked into a stew. She then set 2 place settings at the dinner table with place cards next to each plate of cooked flesh and baked potatoes, zucchini, and whatever other vegetables she put on it. And the place cards, the 2 place cards, each had one of John's children's names on them. So this sicko was trying to serve their father as dinner to them. I guess it was a 3rd plate made. And some articles say that she ate some, and some say that it was prepared for a dog. That's why some people do say that she may have been a cannibal. Katherine claims to have no recollection of the night, but she was arrested anyways, and she was charged, and she tried to get her plea to manslaughter, which was rejected, and on March 2nd, 2001, she was charged with Price's murder. She pled not guilty. Her legal team was going to claim that Katherine was suffering from amnesia and dissociation. They did find psychiatrists to support this. I mean, this lady had to have something going on to do all that. On top of the psychiatrist, they say that Katherine was also suffering from borderline personality disorder. Then out of nowhere, Katherine just changed her plea to guilty. The judge even had a psychiatric evaluation to make sure she understood what that meant. She never explained why she did change her plea, and even though she pled guilty, she still doesn't take any responsibility for her action. When she was being sentenced, her lawyers asked if she could not hear certain things about the case. The judge was like, no. And when Katherine started hearing some testimony, she started getting hysterical and had to be sedated. Like, lady, you did this. The judge saw Katherine as having zero remorse and thus deemed a harsh penalty. He sentenced her to life in prison, quote, definitely never to be released. And this was legal history making in Australia. She was the first woman in Australia to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And of course, Katherine appealed, claiming that that punishment was too severe. The appeal was denied, with the judge saying that the crime was appalling and nearly unimaginable in a civilized society. Katherine, at the correctional center, the Silverwater Women's Correctional Center, is said to be a leader amongst the prisoners and is said to be a model prisoner. So good, we're up there. Katherine, who is said to be the female Ed Gein or the Australian Hannibal Lecter, whatever she is, she's a deeply troubled individual. I just feel bad for all the children that she had and then just left to go do this act and leave them all alone. And thankfully, the police did find everything before John's children had to see that. I cannot imagine being in that position where your parent is like served to you. And I did recently see that the house where all this happened was being put up for sale. But I guess it's priced pretty significantly below its value just because people in the area do know its history. I mean, honestly, if you bought that house, could you ever cook in that kitchen? Well, thank you everybody so much for listening. Till next time.
Thank you for listening. If you need more content or just want to help support the podcast, head on over to patreon.com and search Ouch, Was That a Ghost? If If you need some snazzy merch, you can find it at crowdmade.com by searching Ouch, Was That a Ghost? If you have a story you'd like to share, you can email it to ouchwasthataghost@yahoo.com. You can also find us on Facebook and all the other social media platforms under Ouch, Was That a Ghost?
Help me.
All links can also be found on ouchwasthataghost.com.